the wolf you choose to feed is the wolf that is strongest. So I'm using wolf here as an analogy to say habit, right? So the habit that you feed is the habit that will actually take over your life. Not only your life, but also your time. So the things you choose to spend your time on are the things that will definitely consume your time the most.
Staying motivated takes work. If you don't work on your motivation, you become unmotivated. Join Oumar Jang as he shares inspirational stories and tips to get you motivated to do whatever you need to do. This is the Motivational Voice Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Motivational Voice Podcast. This is session number 50. I hope you are having a good day wherever you are. And thank you, by the way, for those of you who are listening to the show, leaving reviews and sharing the show. I do see your comments and your reviews, so thank you for doing that. It really warms my heart. So kudos to you for doing that. Much like you, I listen to podcasts, and I'm very, very picky about the types of podcasts that I listen to. That's because I find my time to be a prized possession, right? And you should too. We have limited time on this earth. We have limited time in a day. We all have those 24 hours, so we need to choose carefully how we spend that time. But I wanted to share with you a podcast that I was recently introduced to that I thought was really, really brilliant in the way that the podcast was put together. When I listened to this podcast for the first time, it put a smile in my face. And you will see what I mean in a second, because I'm going to play for you a very short trailer of this particular podcast that I'm talking about. Now, full disclosure, they are partially sponsoring this episode, but let's give it a listen.
Leadership, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starfleet Leadership Academy, its ongoing mission to develop leaders through Star Trek, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. A leadership development podcast told through the lens of Star Trek, the Starfleet Leadership Academy, available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
That is the Starfleet Leadership Academy podcast. Check it out and give them a listen and tell Jeff that you heard about their podcast on this podcast. Thank you for doing that. Today we are talking about time management, and I wanted to share with you 3 apps that I personally use to actually help me keep track of things and also manage my time. Now, I am also going to talk about the mindset aspect of time management, which in my opinion, you can't have success using these apps, or any apps for that matter, if you don't also have the other side, which is the mindset side of time management, right? How do you perceive time, and does that perception of time affect the fact that maybe you are having trouble keeping time, or if you use some apps or some tools, whether it's time management or productivity, they don't work so well for you. So we are going to talk about that. And truth be told, we all struggle with time management to a certain degree, and that's okay, right? We all have different ways of coping, different ways of organizing our work, our time, whether it's at work or in our personal lives. So that is completely natural. We are human beings, and we often have way too much on our plates. Work, hobbies, extracurricular activities, obligations, and not to mention the time commitment it takes to be part of certain relationships, whether it's your spouse or your children or your friends, family, and the list goes on and on and on. So I wanted to share with you 3 of my favorite apps to help you manage that. But I want to lead with a disclaimer, which is that all the apps in the world will do nothing to help you if you don't change the way you think about time. So before I talk about the apps, I want you to keep 3 things in mind when it comes to time management and how you think about time. So the first one is, you are the master of your own time. You control your time. So I will often hear people say, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, I am too busy. But do you really not have the time, or are you choosing to allocate your time to something else? Right? So there's a different way of looking at it, right? You control your time, therefore you can decide where your time goes. So think about that. And secondly, if you try to do everything, you will accomplish nothing. You must learn to focus on one thing at a time and see it to the end. So that's really, really important. If you try to chase too many chickens, you're going to end up not catching any of the chickens, right? And you can choose your animal here. You have to focus on chasing one thing, not only chasing it, but also seeing it to fruition. I know nowadays our attention spans are really, really short and that we get bored quite often and easily, but it's important to learn to focus on one thing, and some of these apps will help you to actually do that. All right. And thirdly, the wolf you choose to feed is the wolf that is strongest. So I'm using wolf here as an analogy to say habit, right? So the habit that you feed is the habit that will actually take over your life. Not only your life, but also your time. So the things you choose to spend your time on are the things that will definitely consume your time the most. If you spend your time on social media and get lost in a TikTok rabbit hole, which is really, really easy to do, you chose to feed the wolf of TikTok, right? So if you want to spend your time on things and do it effectively, you have to prioritize how you spend your time. So for instance, if you prioritize spending time with family and friends, or spending time on something that you like to learn or to do, you will equally get the reward that springs out of those actions that you took, meaning spending time with friends and family. Maybe you'll benefit from those relationships and getting to know those people better. If you spend time on hobbies, you will learn something new and maybe, or at the very least, be more relaxed and do something that you love to do. And the list goes on. Ultimately, the point I'm trying to make is this. How you choose to spend your time is the most impactful factor on whether you achieve what you set out to achieve in your life or not. All right, so with that said, let me share with you the 3 apps that I mentioned earlier. So the first tool I want to share with you is called Asana, asana.com. Asana is a very, very powerful tool. I started using it a number of years ago when we got to a point where it became very, very difficult for my family, my wife and I, and we have 3 kids, to keep track of all of the things that we need to do. If you think of the fact that if you have 5 members of the family and every one of them has school and work and doctor's appointments, and you multiply that by 5, not to mention everything else, it becomes really, really difficult to keep track of that on a wall calendar or even in Google Calendar, for example. So for us, it was not only the amount of activities that we had to keep track on, but also the things that we needed to do. So something as simple as you need to mow the lawn, you need to I don't know, pick up the dry cleaning, you need to make a phone call the next week, and things. Getting our mind and our habits right is very important for our well-being. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. But taking care of our bodies, and especially what we put in it, is equally as important. That's why I try to take those gummy vitamins every morning, but I can't, for the life of me, remember to take them consistently. So I was recently introduced to a better option from Athletic Greens. It's called AG1. When you take AG1, you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, and they help you start your day right. This blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and even aging. What's amazing about this product is that it contains less than 1 gram of sugar and has no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or anything artificial, but it still tastes good. And Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. So right now, you can reclaim your health and strengthen your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water daily. That's it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-boosting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/emerging. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/emerging to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. like that it gets to a point where you can have dozens and dozens of tasks, and it's just not feasible, humanly feasible, to keep track of all of that on a wall calendar or even in your head, because sometimes you need to erase things, move things around, and reschedule appointments. It just becomes really, really difficult to keep track of that. Anyway, Asana allows you to keep track of those tasks by the project. So you can create a project for, let's say you want to move, if you're moving. So you can actually create a project for, let's say, a vacation project where you need to get certain things done before you leave for vacation. And you can create any types of project, and under each project you can have tasks. So, and you can assign those tasks to family members, but you can invite them as collaborators. And this tool is also used in the professional setting as well for project management. But it's a very, very effective tool that you can use. They have an app, and you can use it on a laptop or a desktop. And it's a really, really amazing tool. It absolutely, I think, is saving my life in terms of keeping track of all of the things that I need to do, both in my personal and professional life. All right, the second tool I wanted to share with you is called Clockify. Clockify is an app that allows you to track your time. It's a time tracking tool, but it does much more. It allows you to understand where you are spending your time so that you can actually take action on some of those tasks and activities that waste your time. I think sometimes we don't realize how much time we spend on certain activities. You might think that you only spend, let's say, half an hour browsing the web, when in reality you might be spending a lot more time than half an hour, maybe even 2 or 3 hours without even realizing it. So things like email or things like using a certain app or playing a certain game, those can really take up a lot of your time. And what Clockify does, it allows you to actually keep track of your tasks and keep track of how long and how much time you are spending on each of those tasks, so that you can actually run reports based on your productivity. So you can look and see how much time did I spend on this particular task versus the other. Is this what I thought? You can actually create reports and compare to see where you're spending your time, and that allows you to adjust and make the necessary changes so you can focus on what's important. And the third app I wanted to share with you is called Momentum. It's actually a browser extension that you can use on both Mac and PC that has some wonderful features, like allowing you to create a to-do list that you can see, you can hide it and show it. It also allows you to do, this is what I really like about the tool, it allows you to put a main task, or called a focus task, that you can put right on your main screen. So when you open a new tab, you will see that task right there. So it would ask you a question like, what is your main focus today? And you can enter a focus. That focus could be something like, I need to make an important phone call to John, for example, right? And when you open a new tab, the problem with using the internet is that you can very easily get lost into a rabbit hole. But one thing that you will certainly do for sure is that you can open a tab when you try to go to a new website. And when you do that, it's right there. It's the first thing you see, and it tells you what your focus is, which actually not only reminds you of what you promised to do, but also the fact that you have a certain task that's important enough for you to be doing, rather than surfing the net, for example, right? So it also has a lot more features. It allows you to set a timer. So you could use, for example, a focus timer, or you could use something called the Pomodoro technique, which is you focus for a certain amount of time and you take a 5-minute break. I believe it's 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. You work in 20 to 25-minute chunks, which is part of the Pomodoro technique. If you don't know, I will leave a note in the show notes so you can check that out. But what that does is it allows you to focus uninterrupted for 20 to 25 minutes. And you can set a timer using this browser extension called Momentum. And when the time comes, it will ding, and then you can stop and actually take a 5-minute break and then get back to it. And it does so many other things. It also has a soundscape, which allows you to actually play different sounds. If you like to play white noise or a certain sound, whether it's the rainforest or a thunderstorm or a waterfall, you can do all of that using the same app. So it's just, I can't say enough about this browser extension, and it's available for both Mac and PCs. All right, so those are the tools that I wanted to share with you today. And remember, the most important thing is that you have to change your mindset around how you manage time, but most importantly around how you think about time. Right? We all have 24 hours in the day, and we choose to spend time where we choose to spend time. So make the right decision to make sure that the things that take your focus are the things that will make a difference in your life. And I will link to all of these apps that I mentioned in the show notes, so you can check it out. You can just tap in the show notes section to go to these apps. The one thing I want to call out is that I am an affiliate of Asana, because I like the tool so much that I decided to, since I've recommended it to so many people over the years, and I had no relationship with them whatsoever. I just liked the app. But I finally decided to actually, you know what, I should probably become an affiliate, which means that if you click on a link from this episode, it would take you to my affiliate page. And thank you, I appreciate your support. But yeah, it's an amazing tool. I use it to this day. And I actually brought my my entire family into the tool so we can actually keep track, including my wife and kids. We all use it. It's funny. We all use it to actually keep track of different things. Like if I want my son to mow the lawn, I might assign him a task, and then he can sign off on the task. Anyway, you can find the show notes for today's episode on my website at oumarjang.com/session 50. That's session 50. Before we part ways, I'd like to say just thank you for listening. Thank you for being such a loyal listener. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, I hope you'll come back. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time. There are so many more podcasts out there that you could be listening to, but you chose to be here. So I do not for a single second take that for granted. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you for sharing this episode. Until next time, please stay safe and motivated. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Motivational Voice Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate it on iTunes. Get show notes and the latest blog posts at oumarjang.com.